Call our budget meeting to order. Do we have any citizens communication? No. No citizen communication. The first order of business is accepting the minutes. We need to accept the minutes on April the 9th, 2024. Can I get a motion to accept?
Second.
Anybody got any questions or corrections? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Passes 5-0. The minutes on April 29th, 2024. Can I get a motion to accept? Second. Anybody got any corrections or questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Minutes on June the 3rd, 2024. Can I get a motion?
To accept. Second.
Anybody got any corrections or questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Minutes on June 4th, 2024.
Motion to accept. Second.
Anybody got any questions or corrections? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Passes 5-0. The minutes to accept on June 13th, 2024.
Motion to accept.
Any corrections or questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Passes 5-0. The last one's July 1st, 2024. Can I get a motion?
Motion to accept. Second.
Any questions or corrections? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Passes 5-0. First is the budget transfer request. Can I get a motion to get it on the floor for the, this is $125,157.72.
Motion to. Sorry. Motion to approve the transfers.
Yeah. And Phoebe?
Sure.
Oh, I thought we were going to ask for Phoebe first.
Mr. Chairman, this is monies that were savings from other capital projects that we need to put towards what's going to end up being the utility vendor that was the previous company that housed our video for body cameras and in-car cameras. And just as we suspected, they are trying to hold us hostage. We haven't been able to access our video for quite some time now. And we transitioned over to the Axon project, and now we're trying to access our video so we can convert it and have access to it. And we are asking to transfer this money so that we will have available funds to fund that amount that utility is requesting.
Anybody got any questions?
I do. Sheriff, will you make a commitment that if any other agencies ask about that company, you'll give a recommendation not to use them, that how they try to do that?
You can count on it, and I think what would be a good suggestion is that anytime we need video for a case, that we subpoena them and try to get them to show up in court by subpoena and see how that works for them.
Thank you. And since we're recording this meeting, what's the name of that company?
Utility.
Thank you.
I had a quick question too.
Yes.
So is the money that they're asking for, is this something that we were obligated to through contract, or just in excess of the service
It's
level?
a new contract that's yet to be approved, and we just received how much they were gonna charge us to access that video. So, we went looking to try to find the money to fund what they're asking for to access our video, and that's the reason for this transfer request, is because these are savings from other capital projects that we can fund that with.
Anybody got any more questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Next one is, from the solid waste department for $138,546.24. Can I get a motion?
Move to approve.
Or you want to do Matt?
This is money that we need to add to the MRF project, and we finally got in it. And today was the first day of spring.
Congratulations.
Anybody got any more questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye. Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Next transfer is for $75,600 for the insurance. Can I get a motion?
Move to approve.
There's three of these.
Yes. So this one and the two following, will be reclassifying some money for excess risk insurance and moving that either, this one is going into workman's comp insurance. The one for 116 is going into building and content. And the one for 131 is also building and content. When we did our budget for what our costs were going to be and our premiums were going to be, one's a little higher, one's a little lower. So overall, the package, we budgeted correctly. It was just distributing that into which line item. So our excess risk came in a little bit lower and our other premiums came in just a little bit higher. So this is just reclassifying those funds, no additional dollars, just reclassifying where we need to pay those premiums.
Has anybody got any additional questions?
Quick question, what exactly is excess risk insurance used for?
Just that. If there's a claim that's in, we have a threshold, and anything over in excess, it goes to our excess risk insurance carrier
Almost kind
to
of
pay
an
for
umbrella
that.
policy?
I'm sorry?
Almost similar to an umbrella policy, sometimes a homeowner.
Everybody ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Passes 5-0. This one is the next, same thing with the insurance, $52,000. Can I get a motion?
Move to approve.
Any questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye. Anybody against? Passes 5-0. This is the same insurance, risk insurance. It's $80,030. Can I get a motion?
Move to approve.
Any questions? Ready to approve? All those in favor say aye. Anybody against? Passes 5-0. The next transfer is from the Election Commission for $30,000. Can I get a motion? Is Chad Gray here?
Yes, he's behind you.
Oh, he's behind me. Would you like to speak to this?
Absolutely. In years when we have elections within 3 months of each other, we often have overages, and we're trying to address an overage in one of our line items. So I'll entertain any questions.
Anybody have any questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Thank you, Chad. Resolution 9-24-2, resolution appropriating and amending the 2024-2025 county general budget by $70,544.99. Revenues to come from victim assessment fees.
Madam Chairman, before you go on with these, you'll see there's a whole series of these. There are rollovers, carryovers. This is the first budget meeting we've had, which we're going from 23 to 24, so Phoebe is capturing a lot of those monies. So you'll hear that general theme going through as we go through. And if she wants to explain them anything with that, but it's no new money's taking it from one year to the next.
And Connie Martin had stated she is attending court with some of the DUI participants and asked that I explain this. Basically, this is money collected by the courts to assist victims of crime. Anybody got any questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Resolution 9-24-3, resolution appropriating and amending the 2024-25 assessor's budget by $8,500 for educational incentives, salary supplements, revenues to come from state funds.
Move to approve.
Oh, well, this is something that we get every year, salary supplements for assessors of properties. Has anybody got any questions? Ready to
From
vote?
the state, right?
Huh?
That said, it comes from the
Right,
state.
we don't pay for it, so. Everybody ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Resolution 924-4, resolution appropriating and amending the 2024-2025 library budget by $131,289.32. Revenue to come from donations, contributions, and fines.
Move to approve.
This is basically donations of money from different cities and organizations. There's a list of them. Has anybody got any questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Passes 5-0. 924-5, resolution appropriating $39,460.61 to the 21st District Recovery Court. Revenues to come from DUI fines.
Move to approve.
Second.
This is basically fees imposed for DUI, and it's the fines to help support the DUI court. Anybody got any questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Passes 5-0. 924-6, resolution appropriating $26,503.50 to the 21st District Recovery Court. Revenues to come from dedicated account.
Move to approve.
This is fees collected from General Sessions Court for the use of drug treatment programs. Anybody got any questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Passes 5-0. 924-7, resolution appropriating, amending the 2024 Williamson County General Sessions DUI court budget by $115,266.61. Revenues to come from unappropriated county general fund balance.
Move to approve.
Second.
This is basically donated funds within the prior year that we're moving over. Somebody got any questions? Ready to vote? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Resolution 924-8, resolution authorizing a grant contract between Williamson County, Tennessee and the Tennessee Department of Health and Human Services on behalf of the Williamson County General Sessions DUI Court and amending the 2024-25 DUI court budget by $395,876, revenue to come from grant funds.
Move to approve.
Basically, this is a grant for substance and mental health abuse services. Any questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Resolution 924-9, resolution appropriating and amending the 2024-25 Williamson County General Sessions DUI court budget by $20,700 for the DUI court opioid abatement funds, revenues to come from rollover funds.
Move to approve.
This is basically money left over, not exhausted last year to bring it into this budget.
Madam Chairman, and the heading is misspelled, it'll be corrected when it goes out in the packet.
Okay. We vote on that?
No.
Oh, ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Resolution 924-10, resolution appropriating and amending the 2024-25 Williamson County General Sessions DUI court budget by $250,585.03 for the DUI court substance abuse and mental health services grant. Revenues to come from rollover federal grant funds.
Move to approve.
Second.
This is basically funds from a previous grant that weren't used and they roll over to this year. Any questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Resolution 924-11, resolution appropriating and amending the 2024-25 Williamson County General Sessions Vet Court budget by $66,680 for the Vet Court opioid abatement funds, revenues to come from rollover funds.
Move to approve.
Basically the same thing as rollover funds from the previous year. Any questions?
Just the same comment as the mayor made earlier.
Mayor was talking about. Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye. Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Resolution 9/2412, resolution authorizing a grant contract between Williamson County, Tennessee and the Department of Health and Human Services on behalf of the Williamson County General Sessions Veterans Treatment Court and amending the 2024-25 Veterans Treatment Court budget by $377,427. Revenues to come from grant funds.
Move to approve.
Second.
This is actually, I guess, a new grant, and it's from the feds for substance abuse and mental health services. Free money. Has anybody got any questions?
Just a quick question, can anybody like specify what the grant money is gonna be used for specifically?
I can. Hey, I'm Tracy, I'm the director of the court. These
Tracy, you need to come out a little bit so we can get you
Yes,
on
sir.
camera.
Yes, sir.
Thank
So our funding is typically used for treatment that's not covered by VA services for our veterans. It's also used for housing, recovery housing, transportation, various needs that aren't covered by each grant that we have. So every grant that we have is set apart from another grant to cover things that are filling in gaps for our veterans.
Anybody got any more questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye. Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Resolution 9/2413, resolution appropriating and amending the 2024-25 Williamson County General Sessions Veterans Treatment Court budget by $26,181.16 for the Department of Justice Assistance Grants. Revenues to come from rollover federal grant funds. Can I get a motion?
Sorry, move to approve.
Second.
This is basically grant funds from the feds that we did not use last year to roll over to this year. Anybody got any questions?
Comment. Maybe because we've got so many new commissioners and a couple of their first budget, would you explain why we're doing the rollover from one year to the next? Why didn't it do it automatically?
Yes, so the grant award is on a different fiscal year than ours. So our fiscal year ends at June 30. But a lot of these grants will either expire as of September. So we have to get these funds in there because they have the next few months to expend those funds.
It's very important we save them, capture them, or they go away.
Any more questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye. Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Resolution number 9/2414, resolution appropriating and amending the 2024-2025 Williamson County Veterans Treatment Court budget by $286,680.45 for the Veterans Court Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Grant. Revenues to come from rollover federal grant funds.
Move to approve.
Second.
This is the same thing with the rollovers. Anybody got any questions?
I noticed in the third whereas, the amount differed from the revenues expenditures. Is that a typo or is it a partial?
It is a partial, it was a multi-year grant.
Any more questions?
I see in the fifth one.
Right, just a quick question, I guess. Are these grants that typically renew like every year? Is there like an ending to the grants or do we have to reapply for them?
We have to reapply every year. So they will end October, usually end of October, but we have to apply every year for the new one. So that's why some of these, you'll see the rollover, and then the next resolution, you'll see the new money for the exact same grant.
How many grants do we have for veteran services?
We have at least three, four.
Four. Thank you.
Any more questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye. Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Resolution 9/2415, resolution appropriating and amending the 2024-2025 Veterans Treatment Court budget by $20,000. Revenues to come from Veterans Treatment Court Reserve.
Move to approve.
Second.
This is money collected by the Veterans Treatment Court during the year to disperse it. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, through the actual funds.
Does anybody have any questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye. Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Resolution 92416, resolution appropriating and amending the 2024-25 Williamson County Juvenile Court budget by $97,325.74 for the juvenile court opioid abatement funds, revenues to come from rollover funds. This is also funds that were not exhausted for a grant that we're moving over to this year. Anybody got any questions?
Madam Chairman, I'm so sorry.
Well, that's fine.
It says juvenile court, supposedly, it should be juvenile sentencing. Juvenile court is the court they started.
Global End Services for court? Is that what you're
Yes,
saying?
yes, it should be juvenile services instead of court.
Can we do that, as an amendment, or just do it on, when we mail it out? It's already gone out.
Packets went out this afternoon.
So before you vote on it, Madam Chairman, let's get the correct
Okay.
verbiage in the heading. If you an amendment to it, vote on adding.
It's throughout, it's not just in the heading, it's throughout the resolution.
You're gonna replace court with services everywhere throughout the resolution.
I'll make the motion. Move to amend by replacing juvenile court with juvenile services throughout the resolution.
Second.
Does that also change the line item?
It does not, that is the correct line item, it was just verbiage.
See if I got any more questions. This is on the amendment. Ready to vote on the amendment to replace juvenile court with juvenile services. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody against? Amendment passes 5-0. Now to the main resolution. See, as amended. Has anybody got any questions? Ready to vote? All in favor of, say aye. Aye. Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Next resolution, 92417, resolution appropriating and amending the 2024-25 juvenile service budget by $776 revenue to come from prior year state grant fund balance.
Second.
And this looks like another amount that was not used during the previous year, and let's move it forward. Has anybody got any questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody against? We sure get a lot of free money, don't we? Take a little more. Resolution number 92418, resolution appropriating and amending the 2024-25 Health Department budget by $118.34 revenues to come from grant funding.
Move to approve.
And this is the same thing, it's leftover balance.
Child safety.
For child safety seats. Anybody got any questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Resolution number 92419, resolution appropriating and amending the 2024-2025 Health Department budget by $862.13 revenues to come from grant funding.
Move to approve.
This is an installment on a grant. And did you want to explain it more?
Yeah, this is for our seat grant, but actually in the fourth whereas, this was my error, it should be listed as the first installment, not the third.
The first?
Yes, ma'am.
Motion to amend.
Anybody got any questions? Let's vote on the amendment then to change the third to the first. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody against? The amendment passes 5-0. Has anybody got any questions on the resolution as amended? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Resolution 92420, resolution authorizing the county mayor to enter into a contractual agreement with the state of Tennessee for local health services and appropriating and amending the 2024-25 health department budget. Revenues to come from state grant funds.
Let's get an explanation. We've got some questions we have. about this during our agenda review.
Madam Chair, the second whereas, it says the proposed grant funding of 1.2,200,000 has been budgeted in the revenues for the fiscal year 24-25. We actually, that number needs to be, that is incorrect. We appropriated in the 24-25 budget $1,153,300. $1,153,300. So since the budget was approved, they have awarded us an additional $46,900 to bring the grand total up to 1.22.
Amendment on that.
Motion to amend the second whereas to include the prior year budget amount of $1,153,300.
Anybody got any questions on that? Ready to vote on the amendment to change it to $1,153,300. Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Go back to the original resolution as amended. Any questions? All those ready to vote in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Resolution 9/24/21, resolution appropriating and amending the 2024-25 animal control budget by 2,000 revenues to come from Maddie's Fund Grant.
Move to approve.
This is a grant, Andrea. Anyway, it's
Possibilities.
Possibilities Program,
So sweet.
another grant. Anybody got any questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye. Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Resolution 9/24/22, resolution accepting a donation from Friends of Williamson County Animal Center and appropriating and amending the 2024-25 Animal Center budget by $71,000. Revenues to come from the Lakeview family and Friends of Animal Center donations. This is money donated by Maryland and Calvin Lakeview and also Friends of Williamson County Animal Center for spray and neuter services. And also $1,000 to sponsor a kennel called West Haven Pickleball. Anybody got any questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Resolution 9/24/23, resolution authorizing the Williamson County Mayor to enter into a grant contract with the Artsville Communities Designated Agency and appropriating and amending the 2024-25 Parks and Rec budget by 5,000 revenues to come from grant funds.
Move to approve.
Has anybody got any questions? Gordon, you want to explain this a little more?
I'd be glad to, Madam Chairman. Once again, Beth Lothers has done a fantastic job for us in securing grant funding for the arts. This is the second $5,000 award we've gotten here in just the past few months. It's my understanding that this particular $5,000 is going towards performance at the Performing Arts Center. And it is designed so we can branch out into the community. And I believe we're going to be able to use this and cast some minority actors in an upcoming production.
Anybody got any questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Resolution 9/24/24, resolution appropriating and amending the 2024-25 Parks and Rec budget by $301,929.20 revenues to come from donations and reserves.
Move to approve.
Okay. This is the money that they get donated for the hiring and scheduling of officials and supervisors. Also, this goes back to where 54 is we're doing College Grove Community Center for the seniors. And this is money left over from that, and also a donation from the J.O. Clay Senior Citizen Center that they were able to purchase a van with. If y'all have any questions from Board about this? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Resolution 9/24/25, resolution amending the 2024-25 Highway Department budget and appropriating up to $618,345.29 for final paving expenses on Southall Road, revenues to come from state aid program.
Move to approve.
Second.
This is for where the road has already been paved and we're just getting the money from the state for it.
State money. How long has it been, Eddie, since we paved that?
It was early this year.
And this, Madam Chairman, it had gone before the Highway Commission. It'll be tomorrow morning.
Okay. Y'all ready to vote? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Resolution 9/24/26, resolution appropriating and amending the 2024-25 county general fund budget by $500,000, revenues to come from existing budgeted funds and rollover federal grant funds.
Move to approve.
Second.
This is basically grants for that were not exhausted during the previous year. Anybody got any questions? This is for the roads, safe streets and roads for all.
Question. I know that it says that there's matching funds. Those were set up during the fiscal year 2024. I guess in the fourth whereas.
Right. We had to
rollover.
give
Or not
100,000, but we've already voted on this. This is all this that's left over.
Okay.
Some of the monies that we get on state grants, we get, same time deny they don't have any matching. These particular funds require $100,000 on our part to get $400,000 worth of federal money to deal with this particular grant.
Okay. So we basically already approved it to
Yes.
complete it. Okay.
Everybody ready to vote? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Resolution 9/24/27, resolution appropriating and amending the 2024-25 Emergency Management Agency budget by $35,000, revenues to come from rollover state grant funds.
Move to approve.
This is the same rollover that the mayor was talking about, the $35,000. Has anybody got any question? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye. Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Resolution 9/24/28, resolution appropriating and amending the 2024-25 public safety budget by $24,020, revenues received in prior fiscal year from state of Tennessee and unappropriated county general fund balance. These were county money and state money that was not exhausted during the previous year we're rolling over. Anybody got any questions? Ready to vote? All in favor say aye. Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Resolution 9/24/29, resolution appropriating and amending the 2024-25 Sheriff's Office budget by $57,097, revenues to come from grant funds.
Move to approve.
This looks like this is a new grant from the Office of Criminal Justice Programs. Do y'all have any questions for
This is the
Sheriff?
new grant.
Is it?
This is just a new award. It was a multi-year grant,
Okay.
and this is this year's award for that portion of the grant.
Anybody got any questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye. Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Resolution 9/24/30. Resolution appropriating and amending the 2024-25 Sheriff's Office budget by $43,517, revenues to come from rollover grant funds.
Move to approve.
Okay.
This is also funds that were not exhausted during the previous year. Has anybody got any, this was for the violent crime intervention. Anybody got any questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Resolution 9/24/31, resolution appropriating and amending the 2024-25 Sheriff's Department budget by $18,925.21, revenues to come from rollover federal pass-through grant funds.
Move to approve.
This is the same rollover that weren't exhausted the previous year, and this was from the Tennessee Department of Safety and Homeland Security. Anybody got any questions?
I have a question. These are all law enforcement, but I don't see law enforcement at the bottom. Did they not meet?
Well, let's see what you're talking about.
Where it says what the budget committee got, what the commission's taking. Usually there's a line for the subcommittee.
If I may, Madam Chairman, if you remember when we sent the packets out, these were not going back to law enforcement because they're already approved. So it's just a reappropriation that needs to be heard by the budget committee.
So law enforcement subcommittee.
The receipt of the grant funds was approved last year. This is just rolling over leftover funds, so it doesn't need to go back to law enforcement.
They
The project was already
last
approved.
year.
Thanks.
Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Resolution number 92432, resolution appropriating and amending the 2024-25 Sheriff's Office budget by $40,000, revenues to come from grant funds.
Move to approve.
Second.
This is for grant for the Sheriff's Department for tuition, training, and development expenses. Anybody got any questions?
Question. I know we were supposed to get grant funds for the SROs and shares. Is that ever happened?
I couldn't hear your question.
The grant funding for the SROs from the governor, did we ever get that?
Did we ever get it? Yeah.
That hasn't.
Not for this fiscal year. You're-
So we haven't, this year's has not been processed.
Been awarded.
This is for the second year.
Okay,
Actually, it's not been
It's
awarded.
not been awarded.
that's what, I guess
We have
that's what
not
I was
been
wondering, is I
notified.
don't think we've seen anything with regards to those funds that were promised.
It's coming, it's just slow for everybody.
Do we have an ETA, and when we might see those?
Any more questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Resolution 92433, resolution appropriating and amending the 2024-25 Sheriff's Office budget by $40,000, revenues to come from grant funds.
Okay,
This is also grant funds for them to hire, to award hiring and retention bonuses. You did this last year, didn't you? Did it work out well?
I've just seen the money's coming in since I've been in office, so it's working out well for those that are getting it.
Y'all got any questions?
I guess just to follow up with that, so how is that, you actually get to put together some sort of bonus system for that money? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll let Jennifer may know a little bit more about it than I do, but it's only applicable to certain people that have been hired by the sheriff's office who have stayed, which the retention, and I don't know how they count.
The state has a retention schedule, 6 months, a year, 2 years, and depending on the meeting the anniversary dates, our training division will submit that to the state, and then they will refund the county, and we pay the individual the retention bonus.
Okay,
And this is year 2 of a 5-year, $40,000 for each year.
so a lot of people taking advantage of it and sending the information?
It's an automatic, so if they were hired January, in 6 months, they would get a 6-month retention bonus.
Madam Chairman, it's come to my attention that those that are speaking that aren't on the committee need to go to the podium in order to be
Oh, okay.
recorded now that we're doing that. So
Oh, okay. Thank you. So y'all have any questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Resolution 92434, resolution of the Board of Commissioners of Williamson County appropriating funds not to exceed $3 million to be used toward the construction of a special operations facility. Revenue to come from American Rescue Plan Act funds.
Move to approve.
Okay,
Madam Chairman, if I could interrupt, because I'm gonna call on Paul to explain it. This resolution you see here was the discussion we had at the Verizon meeting. So we have funding that's been approved for the special ops. We have some extra money left over with the American Rescue Plan. And we brought this forward and there were some discussions about it. So in fear, that's all this is. This resolution, if it passes here tonight, this will supplant some of the money that we've got for the for the special ops building, which all the funding's been approved there, either through a bond issuance or some other avenues. In the event, though, the commission does not approve this, then you'll see the next two resolutions that Paul will explain. They're a backstop. We have until the end of September, end of this month, in which to commit these funds that are out there with the American Rescue Plan. Once September rolls by and we don't have it, we lose this $3 million. If you approve 924.34 at the county commission level and 924.35 and 924.36 that you're going to see here, I've asked Paul to withdraw those two resolutions because we won't have enough money. So this is a backup program to be sure that we spend those federal dollars that are out there and we do not lose them. Now you can call on Paul to explain.
Commissioner Webb, would you like to talk about this resolution?
I think I can be heard from here, so I'll explain to you here, Madam Chair. The $3 million is as the mayor said, to supplement special ops. We've had this on our to-do list quite a while, probably over a year. It worked in that we also used ARPA funds to move the material handling equipment out to the landfill. So those two projects are joined together. The ARPA funds changed about the last year to allow us to use those funds to prepare for and access the funds for any kind of a disaster. So floods, tornadoes, those kind of things. We could use that. And because of that change in the ARPA rules by the U.S. Treasury and the purpose of the special ops, because it'll be for the aviation unit, so go out and help people from those natural disasters. Also, they have a swift water rescue team that can be used housing at the same facility. So those two things, in my mind, qualified. So we've been working that kind of concept that we would use this last $3 million to put into the special ops as a way to reduce the funding and allow it to go somewhere else. However, just to clarify what the mayor said, our goal, because the state of Tennessee said you need to have everything signed and dotted by September 30th. The federal government gives us to December 31st, but in trying to get contracts resolved and all that, you don't want to be waiting until December 31st, which is on a weekend, to try and get your contract signed. So if there's any hiccups in here for what we approve on September 30th, then we've got from now until the end of the year to solve those hiccups. If there's a signature that needs to be done or some clarification needs to be done, we are against the wall, but we've got 3 months to solve that issue. The other two resolutions here are just in case something doesn't work. The commission does not approve this resolution for the special ops. We have these other two in place so we can start working on them to get those contracts signed. As the mayor said, we can pull those back, but there's only less than $3 million left in ARPA. So we can do this project, or we have fallback projects that we can also work on that can get, in the opinion of these other two, Kevin, can get done, signed and done in the time limit. We also have to have these projects completed by the end of 2026. We have two different deadlines here. I think I've covered that, but if there's any questions, Madam Chair, I'm happy to answer them.
Has anyone got any questions?
Yeah, I guess, I was just curious, are these two kind of backup plans, were these already like in the capital projects upcoming? Were they something that was already planned?
There's things that have been planned. Part of this, the next two that you'll see when we get to those, there's some HVAC that was considered when we did the Schneider review years ago. So we pulled those, they qualify for air, and looking at those. If you look at the Ag Center project, the Ag Center is our continuation of Government Operations Center. So if something happens to the EMA building or this building, we can move out there. It is also a point where if somebody has to be relocated due to a disaster. If the school needs to be evacuated, then the Ag Expo Center becomes that evacuation point. So the things you'll see there, the generators and the HVAC things are just the type of things that would qualify under the ARPA. It came out dealing with the pandemic, but then we've stretched it, the Treasury stretched it to include these disasters. And then the other project there for the air warning, obviously that is disaster related because that helps in the warning of the citizens that there's some kind of storm or danger coming.
I guess so these were kind of planned items.
They've been on the list, yes, and so, but whatever we do with this, I would have to get in and ask the other staff members where they are on their capital plans, if they're coming up quickly or if they're out in their 5-year capital plan.
I guess the point was that we're just kind of using those funds, make sure we're doing things that are on our 5-year capital plan that were already on the.
Part of these have been in, when we started the ARPA, we had 46+ million, but we had $115 million worth of asks, if you will. And so we've gone through those and got the ones that could be done and seem to have the most impact.
The other question I had, because I asked this during the property committee, is that I know we're taking out, we have a couple of bond requests in here. Were there not items that were on those bond requests that we possibly could have used as replacement, emergency vehicles or anything for public safety?
Refer to Phoebe on that.
Double checking because I believe the, on the 2.5. The chillers were not, actually these were not. I think the chillers were not on our intent to fund. So those are just monies that had been, they were on our 5-year capital, we postponed them. But they are not on our intent that we're getting ready to request.
Is there anything on our intent to fund that we could use to possibly use the $3 million for if we don't?
We have looked at the ambulance and the fire trucks. Our issue with that is the extent of time it will take for us to get those back. These monies have to be, obviously we can contract and order those, but it could take 2+ years for us to get those back. And therefore, we won't have the money spent by the deadline of 2026.
So is the spending portion?
Yes, ma'am.
That was a concern, yes.
Phoebe, could you explain that we've already borrowed the money for the special ops?
Yes, so last fiscal year, we borrowed $17.5 million. So the special ops is budget about approximately $12 million. So that is already completely funded. So we have the funds, sufficient funds today to complete the project. This is just putting the $3 million toward that number so that we can use those $3 million of those borrowed funds towards future project of the juvenile services, alternative learning center, or the adult detention center. So this would keep us from using borrowed funds for this project and using borrowed funds to extend the life of that.
Has anybody got any more questions?
I think, didn't we determine that the special ops, the juvenile, all of that, that project sort of began, was it 2015, 2016? Kind of like our 10-year plan, right?
Well, if I could jump in on Commissioner, we've had to make the MRF move from the top of the hill to the landfill. That was first. That is now completed. So on top of the hill where the old MRF was, they've stripped it out and it's ready. In fact, it's been bid out and we've actually spent money getting that online. So that's the next phase. That is for the sheriff and the special ops in order to move the equipment and the vehicles out of the existing buildings we've got. That one's ready to go.
I think the reading's pretty easy. It's like, this keeps our debt lower. So it's taking money and putting it towards debt. So I'd almost rather do that than have to create new debt. So kind of negate it. So you can still use the money that's sitting there for other purposes on this project, which we know is gonna have to happen.
That's a good way to look at it. There's only one hiccup we've got to get this money committed. That's what Paul's talking about. If we don't commit this money, we could get it done in October, but then that leaves Paul under the gun to get all the signatures, everybody getting this done in a timely manner. Because at the end of the year, the money goes back. So you're using Fed money, which is our money, you're using state money, which is local tax dollars.
Save money and interest.
Huh?
Save money and interest.
Well, and we make a little money on this too.
And back to Commissioner Webb's point about the deadline, we're confident that the plans include the ability to have that project completed by the deadline.
All the projects, whether this one or the other two, we can get the contracts. I think somebody over may be here, but on this particular job, the bids have been out from the EPA, and they're there, and some of them may have already been signed. We're looking to, because it's easier to show the commission a couple of large components and make sure that they are contract signed and that they can be completed by the time that we need. And in that way, we can show, for instance, the actual building shell at $1.5 million. Okay, you can see that. It's easy to see. We're done with that with ARPA. And then the HVAC for that, just a little over 1.6 million, but we could put up $1.5 million toward that. That's easy to see rather than just funding the project. We can say this is our portion through ARPA. The other items, Kevin tells me those are ready to go as far as what's at the ag center. Actually, he's got a quote from the contractor for those if we're ready to go. And then Connor says that the sirens are something they've been working on, so they can get those in by the end of 26.
Commissioner Webb, is it not correct though, if the special ops, money for the special ops passes, then you'll pull the others?
Yes, at the commission meeting, if this passes, the other two will be withdrawn.
Any more questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Resolution 92435, resolution of the Board of Commissioners of Williamson County appropriating funds not to exceed $500,000 for the purchase and installation of emergency warning sirens, revenue to come from American Rescue Plan Act funds.
Is there the ability to make a note on this resolution from the Budget Committee that says we approve it only if?
Well, if I'm at the meeting Monday night, then if this one on 3 million passes, then I'll move to the chair to pull the next two. If it doesn't pass, then these will go forward.
I just thought when the packet goes out, that might cause some confusion if there wasn't a note. It's already out, that's right. All right, and check that again.
Get a motion on this? I don't think so.
You just read it. Move to approve.
Second.
Anybody got any questions now? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Resolution 92436, resolution of the Board of Commissioners of Williamson County appropriating funds not to exceed $2,500,000 for the purchase and installation of an emergency generator, 250-ton chillers and related equipment. Revenues come from American Rescue Plan Act funds.
Move to approve.
Second.
This is the same resolution Paul's talking about. Anybody got any questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Resolution 92437, resolution adopting the capital projects fund balance for the Williamson County Adequate Facilities Tax, the Williamson County Adequate School Facilities Tax, and the Williamson County Education Impact Fee for the 2024-25 fiscal year.
Move to approve.
I'm gonna call Phoebe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is the resolution approving the budget for just the privilege tax funds and the education impact funds. So if you'll recall, we've done this for the last, I think 3 years maybe now. The Comptroller's Office looks at these revenues as local revenues, local generated revenues. Therefore, they want us to pass a budget. But the 171 is not something that we normally do an operating budget for. Those projects are brought to you individually and have your vote on those separate. But for purposes for this, for the fact that I have to do it for the Comptroller's Office, this is just getting privilege tax and the education impact funds in a budget. These are projected every year.
So these are projections for this
Yes,
year.
they're just projections.
Anybody got any questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Resolution 9/2438, resolution authorizing the Williamson County Mayor to enter into an amendment to the contract with Gresham Smith and to appropriate up to $75,000 revenue to come from general fund.
Second.
This is sponsored by Greg Lawrence. Commissioner Lawrence, is he here?
He texted me earlier today and said he would not be able to make this.
Madam Chairman, there is since you have it on the floor, there is a proposed amendment to this resolution. If you'll note in the now therefore be it resolved, it says that we amend the budget as follows, and the as follows is not included, so this amendment would need to be made a part of the motion, of the resolution.
Could I get a motion to do the amendment to it? Anybody got any question on the amendment?
Well, I'm on the committee, so I'm gonna speak to this. I see no reason to do this, Madam Chair.
I agree. But my question is, do we still need to amend it to make the resolution correct?
You need to amend it to add the 75,000, but you've asked for the vote on the 75,000, then you turn around after,
Right.
vote on the resolution as amended. And if you will look, the reason I say that, at the meeting we had over there the other night, and I appreciate all of the people that came there, but under the services offered by Gresham and Smith, Section 1, the overall list of components included the Juvenile Justice Center, the county jail, county sheriff, administrative building, the county sheriff's special ops building based on the executive crime agreement. These are the scopes that they're going to do, but there's nothing in here that it's looking at the building for these scopes of operation that he has got listed here. Even, I think it was Jeff. Gresham is mine. It does not pick up some of those services. That conversation today.
I guess my concern is with the Verizon building, and when we've already been told by the city that they don't approve this type of building there. So that's the reason I didn't know if we need to even vote on the amendment or just vote on the original resolution.
You can't do it without the money.
Right, so we need to go and put the
You
money.
have a resolution which is deficient if it's not amended. What they're saying is, what I think the mayor's saying is you can vote on the amendment to get it at least in the proper format, and then you would vote on it as amended, up or down.
Okay. Can I get a motion to amend it?
Second.
Yes. And so I don't think there's any questions on the amendment. That's just to make the resolution correct. So can we vote on that? All those in favor of the amendment of 75,000? Anybody against? Pass? Okay, passes 4-1. And now the main motion, resolution is on the floor. Has anybody got any questions?
Madam Chair, is it about ARPA? I got a question. Is the intent of the property committee to approve this to do 75,000 for each potential property that might come forward?
I have no idea. This is their resolution, and I don't think anyone's here.
I'm on the property committee. Yeah, I can speak to that.
So since this is public, to be transparent and give everybody a shot, we probably need to advertise this if this passes. And I'm wondering, are we going to say 75,000 for each property?
Yeah, I think that came up during the property committee meeting. I think what was decided is that what we were gonna do is work with Gresham Smith to actually come up. I think the important part that came out of this is like, is there cost savings to be found if we look at existing commercial? And I think Commissioner Williams actually brought that up too. If we to look at the Verizon as kind of a baseline. You know, we looked and see if we did the juvenile justice center there, 18 acres, built the detention center as a separate facility, and then converted that commercial space into the alternative learning center, which is basically just office space. Is there any significant cost savings to be realized if that was to be done? The jail, I think, came out that really there's probably not a better location for that. However, if we were able to convert existing commercial, that the jail could be looked at as far as like the location of it on that site plan, because there would be more space if we didn't have the juvenile center there. This also, I think, is in coordination with the seismic study that we're also going to look at. So depending on the seismic study, I think the outcome from that was also going to help us determine if a $325 million investment was appropriate or was a good decision on the current location, or if the commercial would also help us alleviate some of the extra costs we have for stabilizing the construction. We're in a seismic activity.
Yeah, I hear that. My concern is that there may be other buildings in the county and other property. So are we going to continue to spend funds? Because I understand Gresham can look at Verizon as a specific entity place and say this is what we advise. But they couldn't say, look at the Hill Center on Columbia Avenue as a blank piece of land. It's a whole different thing. But the Hill folks might say, well, we want to get into this. We could see that becoming something with the government. And so how many of those we have? And the reason I ask is that if we do this for one, and we get 10 other people that want to do it, we could be spending $750,000 doing assessment studies. That's my concern. And follow up on that, Madam Chair, is I don't think it's always the case, but I think in many cases, if the folks that own Verizon are really interested in selling it to the county, they ought to flip to $75,000. And like if you sell your home, you pay for some of the inspection fees. And $75,000, the price of that building is a small part of that. My thing is the $75,000, if we approve this, we set a precedent. We end up potentially spending more money. So that's I want to know, had you considered how many times would you do this for each landowner that wants to come forward? So that's a concern I've got, Madam Chair.
And I would add, thank you, I would add the timing. You know, we've talked about it, how long this project has been in the works, how long that the department chairs and the different committees and interested parties have been planning this. To me, I think it feels irresponsible to separate juvenile services from the other justice campus, if you call it that, because I feel that when you have juvenile services, when you have juvenile court, juvenile detention, when you've got families who are in crisis, I would prefer that they be managed on the same campus as the rest of law enforcement so that response time is quick, that transfers, when necessary, are easy and actionable. And I think that was something, I wasn't on the board at that time, but I believe, based on our information session, that a lot of that went into place when planning the Triple J project and the law enforcement resources campus. I also feel, to Paul's point, I think we're spending, Mayor, you can confirm, I believe it was $1 million a month that this project increases each month that we're delayed.
I would rather let the professionals give me that, Jim Cross or someone here from Vail.
Well, speaking to Commissioner Webb's, are we looking at one building? Are we looking at, 5 buildings? How long is that process going to take? How long is the assessment? How long do we have to give other entities to respond when we make it public? So yeah, if you want to talk about the increase in cost for each month that we delay.
The Rick Brody with Bell, who's involved, he's gone back and looked at costs for over the last year, and we're in the 4 to 5% increase
increase per year range. So we're in the $12 to $15 million per year. Every year this is delayed, that cost is going up. Not to mention, there's some other mega projects, justice projects, or detention projects that are coming up across the country, and there's limited suppliers in the jail, pre-manufactured cells, that sort of thing. So we get behind those projects, our costs could even go up higher, and the delay could be long.
And then my last concern is, taking a commercial building 40% off of our tax rolls when, we have the campus already, we have the land already, we have the buildings already. We're moving things around, we're having some new construction, but we're not losing tax revenue from this commercial building to do that. So
The tax roll is $800,000 a year we get from that building.
And I believe that there are other ways to utilize that space, and that, we have plenty of community partners that are working together, I think, to find a good usage for that space.
I think my concern is, we've already heard from the city about not approving this for a detention center, so why are we gonna waste $75,000?
Has that been confirmed?
We got a letter.
That was at the property committee?
We got an email, didn't
Yeah, an email with a letter.
we? With the zoning.
Is that from Eric? I guess just to play devil's advocate, that one of the upsides of looking at renovating commercial is that, to your point, the longer we wait, the more our costs go up. If you have existing commercial, you can actually shrink your timeline. So you can actually take time away from what it's going to cost to construct these buildings. We've also seen that, commercial has dropped in value. So where we're looking at $658 per square foot to build new, you're looking at, $200 per square foot to buy commercial, and on top of that, probably another $200 per square foot to renovate it. Now you're looking at $400 per square foot, and you also give yourself the benefit of expanding other services in a 180,000 square foot building. So I think that you can kind of balance the cost of if we elongate this process too much longer. But I don't think anybody was against the jail. We all see is it's a dire situation. We need to get started on the jail project. The juvenile center and the ALC, especially the ALC, the ALC could be put in a existing building. So I think there's just some options there, and I think the $75,000 was just to give us an opportunity to think outside the box and say, what are our options? Maybe it is just leaving the ALC, maybe it's leaving the juvenile center, there. But I think the folks wanted to know, first of all, do we have options that we should seriously consider? And second, if we do proceed with the current plan, what are the property tax implications to the constituents? So those were the biggest concerns, and just going out there and just looking at some options, because pre-COVID, COVID, post-COVID, the landscape's just changing when it comes to capital projects.
Yes.
Either the judge or Zanny, I would like, does the building really matter where it's at for your all's intent? Does that, you have indicated on several occasions that you would prefer to say in and around the Beasley location. And if you don't mind, Madam Chairman, one of those two, and if the judge like Zandy too, that would be fine for I'll need for you to come up here so you can hear it. How many talk us through this whole process of the juvenile side? We've focused on the sheriff's side, and a lot of conversation is coming up now about the school, our central office going over there to the Verizon building, the AOC. That was not in our discussions when we were talking about JJJ. Now, I know that's come out of that because that building is empty, but that's not a reason for us to spend that kind of money, in my opinion, to look at, I'm going to use the word shoehorn, an operation in a building when it wasn't even in our original conversations. Now, you're talking about saving money. We've got to buy, if it came down to that, I've still got to buy the Verizon building. which is additional money. But I'd kind of like to know one more time what juvenile wants, where they want to be, and why they need to be there. If you don't mind, Madam Chair.
Yes, thank you for that. Thank you, Madam Chairman. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk just a little bit about juvenile court, and so many of you I've had an opportunity to have out at our building. But first of all, let me just tell you, my name is Zanny. Usually the judge talks, but I'm Zanny Martin, and I've been working for the county for 27 years. I've been in juvenile court pretty much my entire life. And our mission at juvenile court is very, very important to me. And I realize that before the commission, you all have lots of other things to consider. But for me, it's all about the children. It's about the children and the families that we serve. The question that the mayor asked is location really that important to us? Or could we just go anywhere, a detention center out in the parking lot? And what I want you to know is that location is critical to our mission. Every single day that we come in and work with families and children, we don't know exactly what kind of crisis we might encounter. And what's most important is safety and security. There are times in our world where cases are so highly emotional that people are unable to control themselves. And the sheriff's department's quick response to our courtroom and to our building, to our lobby at times, is very important to us, to be able to de-escalate, calm down so that we can do our work, which is solving the problem that brought that family there in the first place. Another thing that's really important is our service providers in our community. Every single day, we work closely with Williamson County CASA, which is right there on Columbia Avenue, the Department of Children's Services, and the majority of their time in our courtrooms, and their building is just one street over, in essence. We work closely with Mercy Healthcare, which is located right out near us as well, about 2 blocks away. We work with not just our local law enforcement, but lots of local attorneys that practice in juvenile court. And to be honest, the judge is frequently asking local attorneys to accept juvenile appointments in our court. It's very important to our process that there be opportunities for people to be represented when we're talking about child custody and visitation matters, dependency, neglect issues. And the attorneys have told us it's already difficult to take juvenile. They're not doing a juvenile appointment for the money, okay? They're doing it out of goodness of their heart usually, although the state gives them a little bit of money for taking juvenile appointments. But in order for us to ask them to continue that very important critical work and also to drive to Cool Springs in the middle of a circuit court docket would be nearly impossible. So there's a number of reasons why being in the same proximity as our sheriff's department and the courthouse and our service providers are very important to us. And that's not even to mention the fact that being centrally located has always been important to us. We serve families from Spring Hill, Fairview, and the families that we serve many times find transportation difficult already. So to add time or miles to the necessity for them to report to the court or come to meet with us so that we can help them makes it more challenging on the community and the families. Are there any other questions while I'm here?
Don't y'all share a nurse with the sheriff's department too?
We do. We have a medical contract that provides medical services for the sheriff's department, and we also have a nurse that comes over to the juvenile facility. And that's actually very important. For a small period of time, we attempted to begin our own contract for medical services. So I spent a good amount of time, over a few months, researching the possibility of another medical provider just for juvenile services. And no one would contract with us. They were real gentle. I don't want to hurt your feelings, Sandy, but no, you're just not big enough. We prefer to do business with a county government, something a little larger. And so that's why the shared contract's so important. And I think we would run into that with a number of other situations as well.
Madam Chairman, while we have Zanny here, meeting we had over at the Verizon building, the number of beds kept surfacing. Can you kind of explain what you explained? I guess it was a couple of years ago when we come to Gresham and Smith and the professionals they brought, the need for those beds and why the number.
Yes, thank you. First of all, I just want to say that for me personally, usually sitting in the back of the courtroom, the back of the conference room courtroom, like you can tell where I've been all day. But for me, when I hear this project referred to as a juvenile detention center or even sometimes a juvenile jail, that really that just really gets under my skin, because I want you all as our commissioners to help me educate the citizens of this county that juvenile services is so much more than just detaining children. A detention center is an important piece of what we do, but it's just a fraction. You've heard Judge Debbie say that, but let me just tell you that our judge, will often hear and always has jurisdiction over all kinds of other cases. I made some notes, for example. So everyone who thinks about juvenile court thinks about the delinquent children, the youth that have committed an offense, right? That's the first thing that we visualize. But did you know that we also hear every single case that involves child abuse, sexual or physical abuse in this county? Every dependency neglect case comes to juvenile court, and we've had 130 so far just this year alone. That's 16 a month in the 8 months that we've already been in 2024. Those children can range from infants to 17-year-olds, almost 18-year-olds. We have jurisdiction over all custody and visitation matters for parties that were never married. So Circuit and Chancery Court have jurisdiction over divorce proceedings that result in custody disputes, but juvenile court handles anybody in this community whose family has a dispute over their custody of their children that were never married. All traffic offenses for the entire county that involve children, which you'd be surprised how many of those we have. More importantly, though, the judge has oversight of all of the children in the custody of the Department of Children's Services. And last week when I checked, we have 65 children out of Williamson County who are in the custody of the Department of Children's Services, most of them in foster care. So we routinely have to bring those cases before the court to make sure that our partners at the state level are providing for those children's safety and security. Terminations and surrenders, I won't even get into the significance of those, but those are very serious, sensitive decisions that our court is required to make. And so our responsibility is not just to detain children. Our responsibility is so much bigger than that, and it has to do with finding alternatives to detention centers, looking at services, focusing on rehabilitation, resources and solutions to keep families healthy in our community. I want to say one more thing, Mary. You asked about the number of beds. And I've heard from a few folks, there's been some misinformation about number of beds. So first of all, I want to say that currently what you all have is a 12-bed juvenile detention center. It was built in 1989, and it was added on to in 1996. Federal and state laws now say that your juvenile facilities and your adult facilities cannot be in the same location. But have we ever asked ourselves why they said that? Like, why did they mandate that? And they mandated it because they say that's not best practice. They say to communities like us, you have to take your children more seriously. They're not the same as your adults. Like, you have to understand and believe that their brains aren't fully developed, and that you all as a community, me as your juvenile court director, we have the responsibility to realize that they need a different place and a different environment so that we can treat and rehabilitate them. The number of beds that was decided for this new juvenile facility is 32 beds. I want you to know that we spent a lot of time coming up with that number. We didn't just pick it out of a hat. We did research and studies and projections, and we talked it over, and we considered legislation. Because I don't know if you've noticed, but just about every year there's a new piece of legislation that shows me that the state of Tennessee continues to wrestle with the best practice related to juvenile justice. Some years there's legislation that says we should be tougher on our young people, but some years there's legislation like the 2018 Reform Act that says we really are, we need to take into account their development, and you guys are being too harsh, and so we're going to pull back on that. And while our pendulum continues to swing, we've had this responsibility to have a discussion about how many beds are we going to need for the next 30 years, which translates to somebody like me, because I've been waiting for this particular project for 27 years, that what we're really talking about is probably 50 or 60 years, let's just be honest, right? We can say 30 years all we want to, but I suspect it'll be a lot longer for those juvenile court folks that will come after me. And so with this growing community, I just don't think 32 beds is an unreasonable amount. We specifically had to intentionally put thought behind it being 4 different pods, 4 different housing areas, because you've heard it mentioned, but I don't know if it's really been explained that the separation is critical because you have males and females. You can't put those kiddos together, right? You have sometimes have co-defendants. You have children that are very young and vulnerable, and children who are much older and sometimes aggressive, violent, or sexually reactive. And so we have to have the ability, when we're making housing decisions, to separate children for their own safety, the safety of our staff, and the safety of our facility. I also want to talk just a little bit about why. I heard someone say, well, this is so much more space than you have now, and I want to say that's because we've been waiting so long. When they did an addition in 1996, which incidentally is the year that I came in for my interview, they said that should last juvenile court about 5 years. And so that's why, because this project wasn't just taking what we have now and expanding on it. This project is taking what we should have been and expanding on what we're going to become in the next 30 to 50 to 60 years. 6 courtrooms. Sometimes I hear people say, why do you need 6 courtrooms? And you guys have 2 now. That seems so like a big jump there. And I would tell you that we really need 3 yesterday. The judges, we're getting gray hair over there just trying to schedule cases with 3 judges and 2 courtrooms. And the other thing I want to tell you that I don't feel like it's been expressed enough is that we have one really big courtroom. And back in the 90s, juvenile court did court like that. We had big courtrooms, but what we know now that's best practice is smaller courtrooms. And the reason behind that is because we're dealing with really sensitive pieces of information, and they don't need an audience. I mean, would any of us want to come in and talk about our families in front of a courtroom full of people? Nobody would want to do that. And so what we've designed is some smaller courtrooms where we can actually have some real conversations so that we can get to the heart of whatever it is that's bringing that family through, and with sensitivity, grace, and compassion, and dignity, put the pieces back together again. And we need some smaller courtrooms in order to do that, where there's not large amounts of people observing. And the other thing is that we haven't talked a whole lot about the fact that this facility would include a respite center, which is a space for children who cannot go home but really don't meet criteria to stay in detention. And you might say, Sandy, do you really have that many kids in Williamson County that could use a night or 2 to stay in a facility or a place that's safe? And I would tell you, you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised how often we miss space like that. That gives us a chance to let things calm down so that we can get in there and do some work with the family, de-escalate the situation, and come up with a safety plan so that kids can go home and hopefully not end up in the Department of Children's Services custody and foster care. So I want to speak just a little bit to that, Mayor, the size of the facility. There was one question that was asked about how do we assure that the folks that have been making the decisions are being responsible about the decisions. And the last thing that I just want to say, I appreciate this opportunity, I hope I haven't rambled, is that I've worked for this county for 27 years. This is a really big deal to me. And every day that I come in to serve this county, I think humbly about our work. And every day when I get ready to leave, I say to the staff, can you believe we get to do this again tomorrow? They hate that, y'all. They're usually like, is she serious? You know, can you imagine if your boss said that to you every day? But the truth is that most of them will tell you, I can't believe we get to do this again tomorrow. This is a great opportunity, and it's a privilege to serve families in this county, and we mean that. And so the question is, have we been responsible? And I would tell you that I think we're probably one of the most responsible departments that you could ever ask of, because we have a huge responsibility, and we are already taking on that responsibility with not a whole lot of asks. I love Williamson County. I live here. I pay taxes here. My husband and I live in District 5, and I understand that there's a concern about the tax increase. That impacts my family too, right? But I will tell you that I also understand that vulnerable children are important in this county, and we've got to take care of our kids. And so at the end of it all, I just want to remind us that that's really what it's about. It's about young people who we absolutely believe can do better and will do better, given the right tools and the right support. I appreciate that.
My question, a lot more.
Happy to have questions.
Y'all do good work.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
I think you have to work, I've worked with juveniles to realize there's a lot of poverty in this county, there's a lot of child abuse, there's a lot of things going on. People do not have a clue what happens in this county to some of the children.
Yes, I want everyone to know that we're so grateful for the space that we've been given already and for the opportunity to do this work, but there is no space in our current location for our staff to catch their breath. Every day we're faced with all kinds of very serious situations of suicide, domestic violence, children who are having thoughts of hurting others, situations of divorce where there's a lot of conflict within the home, and we're in the center of it, kind of helping navigate the interplay behind that. Our staff comes in every single day, hopeful to make a difference, but also without a place to catch their breath in the middle of it all. So I asked the staff today, if given the opportunity to address the county commission, what would you want them to know? And some of our younger staff smiled and said, do they know that we're cramped for space? And I said, yes, they know. The judges told them that. Most of them are trying to see it. And they said, tell them that it's very hard sometimes to work on the cases that we work on when you're all piled in one office together. We have to sometimes take turns on calling families to have confidential conversations with them so that we're not surrounded by other people having conversations. It's just too tight of a space. Tell them that we would love to have a chance to take a break and catch our breath. And tell them, they said, that it's really hard to work in 2 locations. We could do better if we could all be under one roof, working with families together. But also, they said, as I was getting ready to leave, tell them that we appreciate them. Tell them that we appreciate them considering this.
So, I do have a question, and it concerns my earlier statement about having everything under one roof and on one campus. You also, I believe, work with families who maybe one or both parents are incarcerated. And so those parents are having to be brought over to court to discuss custody or foster or other family care. So having that in the same building, I think, also facilitates that in an easier manner.
Or close proximity, so important, because that many times does happen in situations where the family reaches a point of crisis. It could be that the parents are incarcerated and they need to be present. And the children do not care whether that is convenient for us or not convenient for us, right? They want the judge to hear the whole picture before we make a decision about their future. And I believe that the kids have that right too, so it's important.
Just as a follow-up to that, is it not a possibility to do a virtual where they can attend the session virtually? from the jail, so you don't have to be there in person?
You can do some hearings virtually, that can sometimes be, but I promise you, when it comes down to dependency neglect and the custody of a child, a parent wants to be present. They want their voice to be heard, because there's nothing that I can think of that is more sensitive and emotional than the children's custody. And so the answer is sometimes, but many times it's not appropriate, and it's much more appropriate for us to be together in person to discuss what we're going to do about this.
And do work out of closets, because I've seen closets turned into offices since I've worked with you.
We'll work out of just about anywhere. But the other thing I want to tell you is we have put a lot of time into this project. What's been presented to you all took years of work, and we believe that we've come up with something that will be good for children and good for the citizens. So we appreciate that.
All right, are we ready to vote?
Voting on the amendment, I think.
No, we voted on the amendment, we voted on
As
the
amended.
resolution as amended for the 75,000. For the Verizon. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Anybody against? No. So 1-4. Hey, what'd you do?
Let's vote in, to spend the money.
The 75,000.
Which voted yes?
I'm voting no.
So it's 4 no and 1 yes.
Madam Chairman, and I'm sure you don't want to hear this, but would you mind just taking a 5-minute break before we jump into this?
Yes, yes.
There's some of us that need to make a pit stop.
I'll meet you back there.
Likes it.
Don't you like it? I love it. I love it. I'd be all over there. It's not that for you. Like Jennifer, it's kind of like reliving that you always want to be a judge. Where'd that come from? It's Judge. Who bought that for you? I bought it. Oh. All right, we're gonna go to the next resolution, Resolution 9/2439, initial resolution authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $25,600,000 in general obligation bonds of Williamson, Tennessee.
Yes, thank you. So resolution 9/2439 is the initial resolution authorizing the issuance of just the portion that are county government projects. So these are non-school projects. This is the initial resolution to satisfy our obligation to notify citizens and run this in the paper, what our intent is, and to give them the opportunity to come forward if they oppose. So this is just getting this in the paper. The county commission approved an intent to fund resolution 7/24/6. Total projects in that resolution for the county was a little over 25 million, and that's what was represented here. So what I'm passing out now is just a breakdown of each of the resolutions, what the intent of funds were, and what the projects they correspond with, so that they go along with the next 3 resolutions.
I guess just, so I'm completely understanding. This is, are we actually voting on taking out the bonds, or are we just voting on putting a notice out there to the public that we might be taking out?
This is just the notice. So we are required to run it in the paper for 20 days. This is just so that we can satisfy that obligation, as well as have the timing so that we can look at possibly going to market in November. So we are October, November, so we're just kind of trying to get this in the process so that we can get this.
So has anybody got any questions on this? Just put it in the paper. Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye. Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Resolution 9/2440, resolution authorizing the issuance, sale, and payment of not to exceed $40,400,000 of general obligation, public improvement, and school bonds of Williamson County, Tennessee, and providing for the levy of taxes for the payment of the debt service on the bonds.
Move to approve.
Second.
This is the actual resolution to go to market. So this is authorizing the sale of not to exceed 40.4 million. And this will correspond with what you see on your handout. General obligation, the intent to fund was approved, Resolution 524-3. And there are the list of the school projects in which we approved, or the county commission approved. The intent to fund, Resolution 524-4. You will see the next three projects, the asphalt, the roofs, HVAC. Then an intent to fund, Resolution 724-7 was approved for additional dollars for maintenance and technology. The total school projects in this bond equate to a little over $14.5 million. County general projects, you see listed right below that number. The intent to fund was approved, Resolution 724-6. This is to approve the wing renovation, sheriff vehicles, ambulances, fire trucks, et cetera. You will see that for a total of $25 million, a little over $25.2 million.
If Phoebe, Madam Chairman, if you don't mind, for our new commissioner, would you mind just refreshing why we have to do some public hearings on some, and then like school projects we don't?
And that's just legal. I'd probably let legal get involved a little bit more. We do have bond
Jeff
counsel.
O right back there.
So I will let him get more into the weeds and the legal
It's
side of
good to
things.
remember this, Commissioner, because it never changes, or it hasn't changed as long as I've been around. There are certain things you have to advertise, and others, however, the county commission can do that.
Jeff Oldham, Baxter and Sims, I'm bond counsel of the county. So under Tennessee law, you issue general obligation bonds for non-school purposes. The first thing you have to do is adopt an initial resolution. It's what you just adopted. The one pager that identifies the maximum par amount of the non-school general obligation bonds, the purposes to which the proceeds are going to be put, and the maximum interest rate. If that's adopted, that resolution then goes in the paper with a notice that says, citizens of the county, you have 20 days to protest the issuance of these general obligation bonds. If 10% of the voters protest it, you gotta have a referendum as to whether to issue those bonds. School bonds, I think in recognizing that counties are constitutionally required to provide schools, and sort of inherently in conflict to give voters the right to override the constitutional responsibility you have to provide schools, you don't have to go through that. And so that's why you've got an initial resolution for not the entire 40 million, but just a portion of it. Exciting stuff.
Anybody got any more questions?
I guess a quick question. So if it were to go to a referendum for the 25-6, I guess just hypothetical, would that then change the amount of the 40,400,000? Would that reduce that?
It could, because this is, the 40 million it includes the 25.
So the way the bond resolution reads, you would not be able to issue the bonds that are covered by that initial resolution until that initial resolution was published and 20 days had elapsed without a sufficient protest. So until that happens, you would only be able to issue the bonds for school purposes. 20 days passed and there's no protest, and you could do the whole 49.
The 10% of voters, is that registered voters or voters who voted in the last election?
Registered voters.
You don't have any more questions?
Honestly, the only question I have is, I know we're looking at 40 million for this one, and this one is 23 million, so that's another 63 million. I kind of brought this up earlier with already going up the bond for this, and I think there's another 280 million. I'm not sure what's gonna happen there, but already we're exceeding, the principal we just paid off this last year. Do we have any sort of indication of what our debt service is gonna look like just with these two bonds? Once we pass it?
So we actually do, if you'll take a look at the handout, let me see, I'm sure I split it for us. So the beginning balance of fiscal year 24, our debt was $1,097,740,000. For the fiscal year 24-25, we will be paying off principal payments of $49,960,000. With just these two bonds, the school general purpose and the county district, in a total of approximately 62, that would increase our bond debt up to a little over $1.1 billion. Now, there's a few other scenarios on there just so you can see kind of how that would relate if we add additional bonds to that. But we are looking at an increase of approximately between, for this particular issue, and what we're paying off, an increase of 12.6 million just in this particular, not counting juvenile justice, not counting anything for JJJ. Just this bond and what we're paying off for the fiscal year would increase our debt balance by 12.6 million. That is that first scenario of your handout you'll see there.
So our debt service will go up by 12?
Yes. Yes. We're paying down a little less than 550 million, and we would be increasing by 62. So that is an increase of 12.6.
But our debt service payments, so I guess I'm just looking at debt service payments as far as our operating budget. What increase? Because like this year, I think it's close to 92 million total for debt service.
It is.
So do we have an indication of what the debt service will look like for next budget year?
And that would depend on what you approve at this next county commission meeting. Just looking at what we will need to pay, for example, the 280 million, what would require us debt service per year of 20.6 million.
I think the question that came up over and over again at the property committee meeting is, everyone wants to know, especially with the reappraisal year, what is the net impact to property taxes? Like, what are we looking at if we're going to be increasing debt service?
So depending, and only looking at, again, that would depend on what 500 action, yes, the 500. What action the county takes on the bonds as a whole, not just this one, but also the next coming. We were looking, I think the question was posed during property of what the property tax increase would be. We did the full 280 million. And then I have one, we did the 280 million and what you have in front of you this evening for the 62 million. You have enough, let me know.
And this money she's passing this out, this commissioner, this is one of the questions you brought up in the property meeting. You wanted to know how much that was going to impact each commissioner, and so what Phoebe's done here.
Is this the same? 100? But the bond issue is different.
Okay.
It should be the bond issue.
So this should answer your questions, what a penny does right now and what that would result on a $500,000 home, which is a little under the medium. The medium is a medium now, 800?
Approximately 617,000.
Okay. Well, this is a little under the medium. But this is how much that would monthly cost to your homeowner in our county, $500,000.
So the first handout you have is the debt issue size. If we were to issue 280 million, what that would do to your property taxes, what those required pennies would be, everything else constant. So that's not including this extra 62 million. That's just the 280 that you will see in the next resolution. So just the property tax increase, just to meet the obligation that will be put on the county for the 280 million would be, if you look down towards the end of the page, that would be approximately 11 cents. So 0.1097. That's approximately on a $500,000 home, $137.14 a year. Take a look at the last handout you were giving. You take a $500,000 home, a bond issue size of $343,620,000. You're looking at a 13-cent increase. That would be for everything in front of you this evening. That would be the 280 as well as the 63.6 for the county and the schools. So that total bond issue of $343,620 would add approximately 13 cents to your tax rate. It would increase the annual addition cost to the homeowner of $168.30 a year, a little over $14 a month.
So I take notes all the time, and then I rely on my brain to keep all that information in there. So when years ago, Phoebe, we went up to $1.88. It's $1.88 that we have currently. That's been 5 years, 4 or 5 years? Yeah, 5 years, I think.
Real price on fives.
Yep, and then, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't that movement, that was actually, we went back to $1.88 because we had reduced?
So we started at 222. After Brad and all of us got through working on those numbers, the certified tax rate was set at $1.68, 9, something like that, don't quote me. And the commission saw the value of bumping that up during the reappraisal. That's the last time we've done that. Cover and carried us through to this point. Now, I think though the only fallacy in this, I know Sam and Phoebe worked on this, is for everyone to realize we do not need all of this money on the JJJ program in the beginning. So you have to figure out, we can get Sam to create it or Phoebe to create it, put it up on the screen, tell you how much money, and then they can calculate it for you. But you're not asking for all of this money up front. You're asking for this year. Now, eventually it's going to come, but between now and next year, we're going to have another reappraisal. And I suspect our reappraisal is going to drop a considerable amount from the last 4 or 5 years we did this. So it is a moving target. You almost have to, my job is to present you, or Phoebe to present you, facts. Nobody likes debt, I know that. But you can't build these programs, you can't have what we've got in Williamson County without paying something for it. You just can't do it. So the decision is you guys to figure out how much you want. And if you don't want it, then you tell Juvenile and the sheriff, back up, we'll just live with what we've got. It's pretty simple. The sheriff needs help. Juvenile services over there, they need help. We're just fortunate the last 2 years we've not had to build schools. And maybe numbers are not increased unless they've come in today, the day after Labor Day. They're kind of flat. So maybe we can stretch another year out of this. That's not gonna satisfy those that say that I can't vote for a tax increase. Don't vote for a tax increase, sheriff can't have it. You
Does this mean our criminals are increasing instead of our students?
I don't know about that.
Did you know about Franklin's special school district raised their taxes 11 cents? It's just under the radar, nobody even knows.
I've got a question, just one word. Where does Williamson County fall, I guess, against all the other counties in the state on what our tax rate is compared to everybody else?
We're one of the lowest. If you start weighing the effective tax rate, we're probably the lowest in the state as opposed to the 188. But it's not the tax rate. Sam has convinced me after so many years, it's not the tax rate. It's the value of the property. It's the net value, net debt ratio. Sam, if you don't mind, come up here and give us we've got some new commissioners. They need to understand this. I'm still back there. Do you leave? He's hiding behind the pole. It's important for you to know this.
Yeah, I'm not sure, I don't understand what that means, the.
Net debt ratio and the values. He made a statement the other night at the property meeting, which I think a lot of people glazed over. The values that we've got in our assessed values, we talk about it.
Well, and there's kind of two different questions. The question that was asked at that meeting was, I think, sort of, can we afford this? Or what does this mean? You know, is this too much? How much debt is too much? Something to that effect. And what I was trying to explain at that meeting is the way the analyst community and the investment community looks at this. They look at the tax base that secures the debt, the tax base that supports the debt, when deciding, you know, whether the county can. And I think the question was, would this affect our AAA rating or whatever? So what I commented on, which I found to be a staggering number, is that Comptroller's Office, Tennessee State Comptroller's Office, puts out a report every year where they describe, you know, in tabular form, the property value of the tax base of each county. In between reappraisal years, they have to do a periodic estimate. And the last time we went to the rating agencies, we were using the estimate of like around 65 billion as the property tax base for Williamson County. The report that the Comptroller's Office had just put out this year revised that to over 100 billion. So the rating analysts that look at the county and investors, they're going to be almost confused because the next number they see is going to go, you know, it's a 30-some billion dollar increase in the tax base that supports your debt. So, you know, the debt is significant, but it's been moving, you know, I mean, at least proportionally to the tax base that secures the debt. So, you know, as far as the tax rate, the mayor's right, your tax rate is certainly amongst, you know, especially on an effective tax rate, as he said, it's amongst the lowest in the state. But, you know, the property values are higher too. So, you know, I mean, the tax bill that someone pays is a function of both things, you know, the rate and the value. So you can, it depends on how you look at it.
How do these, this is my observations, not understanding all the real estate markets and all this, but my home value, at least on Zillow, has gone up a lot. And but it also looks like a bubble. So we do this reassessment, and you know, these home values have been selling for more, but all of a sudden the bubble burst. You know, that takes a while for all this to catch back up. Then the next time around, the values have gone down, but we're paying more in taxes and all that. So, I mean, and that has happened at times, you know, last 10 or 15 years. In some places, at least, not as bad around here, but it's happened in other parts of the country, Florida, Nevada, some other things. So how does that come into play?
When they do the reappraisal, the number, whatever your assessed value is, you know, it's kind of locked in for the next 4 years until they do another reappraisal. So it really doesn't matter for you what happens to the value of your house in between that cycle. It's like whatever your tax bill is the day after the reappraisal, unless the commission changes the tax rate, you're gonna pay the exact same or, you know, until they do the next reappraisal.
Well, they will increase the tax rate, so you're gonna have the revenue. That's what they've already incurred.
For the existing property owners, I mean, I'm not sure I quite understand. I mean, for John Smith, who has his house reappraised, and the tax rate's 188, and you owe $3,000 a year in taxes. Well, they're gonna owe $3,000 a year for the next 4 years unless the commission raises the tax rate. And I suppose, you know, in the scenario he's describing, I guess it's a great recession, again, something to that effect. So, you know, to the extent your other revenues in the county that you rely on dry up, then it is conceivable that I guess the county would say, we've got to make up for what we're losing in development fees or impact fees. We're gonna have to raise property tax, you know, I mean, that's conceivable, I suppose. I mean, we've been through that a little bit. I mean, these aren't, and I will say, especially in Williams County, it's extreme, maybe, you know, luckily we don't do this year in, year out. And I can't imagine a scenario where property tax values, even if they dipped, didn't come back prior to the next reappraisal, you know, 4 years later. You know, we've had temporary dips, but at least in this county, they haven't been sustained for a period of time. So. I do think that one comment the mayor made is really, really important. It's really important in what we do, is that when they do that reappraisal, the tax rate, I guess, to make sure everybody, especially new commissioners know, they lower the tax rate so it's revenue neutral. Now, it doesn't turn out to be revenue neutral for every single person because some people's property go up and down by different amounts. But the concept is the reappraisal itself is not supposed to produce any more revenue for the county, which is problematic to the extent that, you know, people think, well, you know, you have inflation and everything else, but they don't really allow you to capture inflation in property values. You have to go that extra step and raise the tax rate again to capture some of the growth in property tax values. So that just, if you can remember one thing I just said from all that, is reappraisals are supposed to be revenue neutral. It's not, yeah, it's not supposed to be a windfall. And you know, I know in other states it's different, and people are like, you know, my properties have doubled, my taxes have doubled, and, you know, I wish people would stop moving here. We have a different system.
Mr. Mason.
I sat through a presentation, it may have been a year or two ago, and you showed a graph that talked about our net to debt ratio. And I remember looking at that graph and seeing how we were going in a downward trend. And I found that really fascinating because even though our debt number was going up, our debt to net ratio was going down. Because the county is growing, we're getting more tax base. Do you have an updated, or can you provide an updated graph? I would love to see it at the county commission meeting next week for those commissioners that didn't sit through the presentation a year or two ago who weren't elected at that point. Because I think it really is eye-opening to see how much Williamson County has decreased their debt to net ratio over the last 20 years. I think we're at 30% at one point, you know, and now we're down to, if you believe, I'm doing my math right, you know, 100 billion and we've got $1 billion in debt. I don't even, you know.
It's like 1%.
1%, right.
I can say, you know, the chart I showed in that presentation, I think was maybe a 20-year, 2020. I can say the next one, it will never have been lower. And this is just a factual statement. Even if you did this whole 300 million, it will never have been lower even after that, because it's the debt as a percentage of the tax base. And if your tax base just went up by 50%, like according to the, comptroller statistics and data. So, even if your debt went from 1.1 billion to we'll just say 4 billion, that's not really the plan, but just hypothetically, but you're measuring that against 100 billion, that's 1.4%. So that's, I think, the last number I want, only to, but I feel like, it's been in that, it may be comparable, it may be 1.3, 1.4, but I mean, it's surprising, but it's that's what's going on is.
And do I simplify it in my mind if I equate it to a $500,000 mortgage or $500,000 home and I have a $5,000 mortgage? I mean, is that a simplified way to kind of look at it? Like you're carrying 1% of your debt. Same thing, you're on your mortgage, you're being secured by your house, your property. Here, our debt in relation to our tax base. I mean, that's the way it kind of makes sense in my head. Is that a crazy way to look at it?
It's, well, I mean, they're kind of like different concepts at play, because your tax base isn't collateral in a sense that you can sell it. Because I've heard some people want to think of it as like debt to equity ratio, like it's collateral that can be sold to pay off the debt, and that's not what's really happening. But I remember from that presentation, one thing I was, really the security is your ability to tax this tax base.
Okay.
So, and I remember when we were having that workshop, it's like, well, how do you articulate this to, a taxpayer? Is it debt per capita or blah, blah, blah. And I remember saying the most accurate way, and I used, I think, $1 million house as an example, round number. But if you had $1 million house, that it was something like maybe $11,000 or $12,000 of the county's debt is secured by future taxes on that house. It was literally like around 1% or something, 1 to 1% of whatever the value of the house is. That's how much future taxes from that house. So again, if you had a $300,000 smaller house, you're not really on the hook for much of the county's debt. If you have a $10 million house, no more. But everybody could do the math in their own head and take whatever the value of their house is, multiply it by a little over 1%, and say they've kind of borrowed against my house 1%, whatever the value of my house is. And that's paid over many years. If you retire and move to Florida, the tax liability doesn't follow you. Whoever buys the house, they're going to be taxing the house to help pay off the debt.
I was looking at a map of Tennessee with all the different counties, and I believe there were 2 that we haven't known yet. Can you explain that?
I would guess I don't know which 2 they are. I would guess they're either small or not growing. I mean, why do you, most debt is.
So if we were growing, then there wouldn't be any debt?
Well, a county, most of your, I would say a big portion of your debt, if you look at your net debt, that excludes the hospital for a second. I think the last time we looked, 70% of it was for schools. I think most of that was to handle growth, over the last 20 years. And I know a county like Shelby County, they've had a decline in student enrollment. They may have built some replacement facilities, but and Hamilton County, they were flat. So you take Williamson County right now and just pretend you don't grow for the next 20 years. How many new school buildings are you going to need? And what happens at the end of 20 years is you've paid off all the debt related to the buildings that you built. You haven't had to borrow any new bonds for schools because you haven't needed any new schools. So in that case, that's where you'll find a situation where a county, has very low debt.
So probably small, rural.
Well, there are some counties that only have one one or two high schools at most. They might be, 20 years old, or they might be new, but I mean, well, if they were new, they'd have some debt. But if it's a county that only has like 2 high schools, and they funded them 20 years ago, they wouldn't have any school debt, for release related to high school.
These counties had no debt.
Well, and their property probably doesn't go up in value either, where people are making lots of money on property going up in Williamson County. Those counties, probably the property values staying the same.
There are many counties, I think, you that are engaged with the county commission association, but know this, there are many counties that a penny doesn't generate $100,000. And to buy a couple of vehicles, the sheriff's department, they just can't do it. You're gonna have some resolutions in here that we're trying to help some of these other counties out. Now, Mike's got one in here tonight for a roll-off truck or a dump truck of some kind. I'm not sure they can pay that, but we're gonna give them an opportunity to do that. If they can't pay for it, they don't get it. Sheriff's got some vehicles. We're trying to help out our neighbors the best we can. That's the right thing for us to do. That doesn't change your debt, or we can surplus it. And I couldn't tell you what we'll get on a vehicle, but it won't be pennies on the dollar. But there are so many counties. Paula and I met somebody here recently that a penny was generating 35,000, 30.
Yeah, 35, 38,000.
That's how
buy a police car.
Couldn't buy a police car. So we're tickled to death to get anything we can throw their way. And they've got people in their community that still work with their hands and repair things and fix things. Whereas the sheriff, we don't have that skill set without building a garage. Huh?
John.
Well, John, if we work John any harder, we're gonna put a harness on him. But, I mean, those are the realities that, while I've got bond counsel and Sam here, you brought up the hospital. How does the hospital debt work in this $1 billion number that everybody talks about, Sam?
Well, to my knowledge, the county has never paid a penny towards that debt. And that's why we talk in terms of 2 numbers. The county is essentially a guarantor. So if the hospital cannot make debt service payments, which again, we have a 20-some year history at least where that's never been the case. But if the hospital could not make, and actually I think the hospital has reserves first. So the first thing that would happen if the hospital couldn't make their debt payments is they would use their own reserves, which are required to be there. And then if another year goes by and they still can't make their debt service, the county has said, we will back our, and the reason the county has done that is to allow them to borrow at AAA borrowing rates instead of hospital rates, which would be meaningfully higher because it's considered, it's a different kind of credit. So when I talk about net debt, you can also think of me saying as property tax supported debt. I mean, that's the debt that you all are taxing your citizens to pay. The gross debt includes debt that nobody's paying anything on, but you are guaranteeing in the event of, shortfall in the hospital. So.
All right, we ready to go and vote on this?
I'll make one more thing.
One more,
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah, only thing to say. So I know that you mentioned this in the property committee, you said there's the ability to tax, but then the willingness to tax too. And I think the thing that's missing here, and thank you, Phoebe, for putting this together, I really appreciate it. But I think one of the things that we're missing here is as we build more of these buildings and as we grow, we don't fully understand what the impact's gonna be to our operational budget too. So we have, looking at the Triple J project, for instance, we're seeing additional $10 million a year just operational expenses. And we haven't even gone through the whole market study on where we need to be to pay our teachers more, to pay our law enforcement more. So my concern is as we take out more debt and we increase our debt service, that's less money that we have to put towards these other things that we know are also gonna have to be this next budget year. So looking at ways and opportunities to try and save the amount of debt that we take out and prioritizing those capital expenses. I know we mentioned no more school buildings, but I'm looking at, $60 million in debt, and I think there's only really two capital projects really on here, and that's the Bethesda Rec Center and the library. So really only 13 million is going towards really new building construction. The rest of it's more, in a sense, more upkeep and operational than it is. So we're taking bond debt out on things that really possibly could have been funded with fund balance or, some sort of capital reserves, capital outlays. I think we do have, money that we spend that way. So that's my issue, with the debt, is that this is just one small piece to say, okay, this is what it's going to cost in a tax increase just to pay for the additional debt service. But we don't have a full picture of all the other additional increases that we're looking at, this next budget year. So I guess I would just prefer to know that there's some sort of guardrails to kind of, minimize or at least be able to project, what we're looking at. Because as we vote for this debt service, we're not voting to pay for it now. We'll be voting for it as part of the next budget year and the debt service on that. So I guess I'm having, difficulty seeing what the full picture is and what the full impact's going to be, and, what that property tax increase is going to be looking like for the constituents. So,
Well, I would say there's always this trade-off between the tax rate and I've heard, for example, somebody might say, like on we'll just say non-buildings, like got some of the things on that list, whether it's vehicles or whatever. Somebody might say, well, why don't we not borrow for that and just pay it with, current operating revenues? And I'll leave reserves aside because that's a whole other subject. I'll talk about it if you want. But, if you were to levy a tax, a higher tax to pay for shorter life capital stuff, then you could basically have less debt. But that almost defeats the goal of trying to keep the tax rate lower, And, the other, so there is this trade-off between, I don't want to borrow money, but I also want to keep the tax rate low. Because basically borrowing for those purposes does stretch it out over time, which helps to keep the tax rate more manageable. I'd also point out, sometimes your capital program is so big, sometimes somebody will single out something that maybe has a 10-year average life or something like that and be like, why are we borrowing that on a 20-year bond? I just want to always remind you that 20 years is a very conservative term for school buildings, that will have a life of 40 years. So, the mayor could decide tomorrow, let's start financing these school buildings over 30 years instead of 20 years. That would be very acceptable in the market, but you'd pay a lot more interest over life. Financing these things over 20 years is very conservative, it saves a lot of interest, So to me, you kind of got to look at them holistically and say, well, we spun the really big stuff kind of shorter than we could. And then there's some of the smaller stuff that we fund a little longer than we could. But if you put it all together, it's still a very conservative capital financing plan.
I guess it just would be good to look for other revenue sources and also other cost savings to kind of offset that. So I'm not necessarily against debt. I just would like to know there's some sort of guardrails around how much debt we really want to take out, keeping it kind of in a sense, keeping it net neutral on our debt service side so that we don't see a debt service bill going up and up while we need to be paying our people more.
All right, let's vote on this. It's almost 7 o'clock and we've still got more resolutions. All right, we're ready to vote. All that's for this resolution 92440, say aye. Anybody against? 4, and 1 against. Resolution 92441, resolution authorizing the issuance, sale, and payment of not to exceed $23,220,000 of county district school bonds of Williamson County, Tennessee, and providing for the levy of taxes for the payment of debt service on the bonds.
Move to approve.
Okay. This is basically, we've already discussed this.
It's just the rural projects that's on the bottom section, the county district rural projects. For a total of 23.2.
Oh, Is anybody on the commission got a question before we go on? What's your question?
Well, I'm reading it, and it says acquisition, design, construction, improvement, renovation, equipping of K through 8 school facilities. This is an acquisition of property, and I just want to know, this is not building a new school.
That is correct. So this is for our K through 8. This is the county district rule that just services K through 8. Your intent of funds were for general security, physical security, network security, asphalt roofs.
What you have down here.
Correct. There is no new building, no. That is just the verbiage so that it is all inclusive because it wasn't to build a facility,
So
but we
this
are
is
doing
general
repairs.
terms, This is just general, this payment of engineering, architectural, all that, that's not really required by roofs and HVAC, right?
Right, it is anything that we may need that would encompass whatever we have to do for that maintenance. That maintenance requires us to get, an architect to look at it or a maintenance for an engineering, whatever services are involved. This is all inclusive so that we have that ability to do that.
Okay.
All right, ready to vote? All those in favor say aye. Anybody against? 4 for, 1 against. Resolution 92442, resolution authorizing the issuance, sale, and payment of not to exceed $280 million of general obligation public improvement bonds in one or more series, Williamson County, Tennessee, providing for the levy of taxes for the payment of debt service on the bonds and allocating educational impact fee collections to defray educational capital expenses.
This is the actual resolution regarding the JJJ project. We are also including the educational impact fee that we are suggesting to pull $12 million to go towards the ALC. So that is why you see the verbiage there of allocating education impact fee. This is all in one resolution. This is the total amount that we are that we're estimating needing. This is not saying that we're going to borrow all of this money at one time. Our intent is to not do so. Our intent is to look at our schedule, how things are progressing and what we need from one fiscal year to another. And this would give us the ability to go back and bond that in increments. So we are not anticipating, but this is what is needed to finish the Alternative Learning Center, Juvenile Justice Center, and the Adult Detention Center.
All right, I think this is something that's kind of like we beat a dead horse. We discussed this for 3.5 hours a few weeks ago. So I think we've had a lot of questions. I do want to, Sheriff, if it's okay, call on John about an issue they had that really was almost a disaster, just to make people understand a little more how important this is.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, the unit went out last week. We were able to get parts for it. We spent 14 hours that day, got it back online. Otherwise, either had to start making phone calls to, it was, 100 degrees out. And he had to make phone calls to get people out of other places. And it's just, lucky that we got the parts. I've got an issue with Karen Guffey's unit there that I've been waiting on the part for almost a year. We were able to get that back up with that headache. We're just staying late to do it, so.
And how much money are you talking about housing 200 inmates at another facility would cost the county?
Well, an average daily population, an average daily population of 340 would be calculated conservatively to be $1,020,000 a month. We'll tell them how much you think we save by you doing the work opposed to having a contractor come in.
Roughly 20,000. What we were able to, and it would have taken them, weeks to get, even if we couldn't have done it ourselves, it would have taken them, we can have 2 weeks to get it done. And we did it again, just because that's the whole process of getting it done and then get the parts. So.
Have you looked at the plans for the new jail and the juvenile center to see any savings? I know it's been cut and cut and cut, but are you looking at additional?
Yeah, we're still doing that. We're still looking at running engineering, a lot of stuff. So it's hard to, Jim Cross is way better at that kind of thing than I am, but we're certainly jumping in there and saying, no, we don't have that. by, one of the things that came up was a $50,000 savings by not running the network cables and conduit. I mean, it's, that's a no-brainer, we already have run not in conduit, so. It's a lot more expensive to run that.
I look at this is possibly, it could cost this much, but hopefully not. We're still looking at savings, maybe moving the ALC from juvenile, save money from there. But we need to get this moving. It's only gonna, if we don't get this moving, we're gonna cost the county millions and millions more.
Rick, he said roughly $13 million a year extra every time we put it off, so a little over $1 million.
Has anybody got any more questions for John? Thank you. Any more questions for Doug?
I've just got one question. Overall, we almost got the answer. And it's been recorded. And this gives me something that I can point back to watch, because there's been a lot of really good information given here tonight. You start asking about this, about overall debt and how much that actually goes back to the hospital that they're paying for, and then actually goes to this county debt. Back 10 years ago, we were $1.2 billion in debt. And then that's the first time I knew that might actually not all be to the county, possibly to the hospital who is paying their own bill. How much is the hospital of the 1.2 I keep hearing about, and how much is the county? If somebody can give a number.
So hospital's outstanding debt is currently $191,090,000. And yes, if you look at the handout, it's the very first. The handout that has the different scenarios of your bond beginning balance of 2024. That first line is hospital. That is currently what we have for the hospital.
And for a backstop, Commissioner, if I could get Jeff Mosley talk about how they have to, Sam referred to it, the hospital has to set aside 1 year's worth of payments.
Correct. We have an interlocal between the county and the hospital, and has certain conditions on the hospital's repayment, including the prepayment, or not prepayment, but the reserve of 1 year's debt service. And they have to keep a debt ratio of 1.5 in cash to debt, so that they can meet their obligations. They're running about 2.0 or above right now, last month I saw.
So whenever we hear the overall debt picture, take that number and take that out, and that's what we're talking about.
Yes. Yes, and actually, you can also take that second number out, the city-county partnership. There's a debt balance of $935,000. So many years ago, we entered into agreement with the Spring Hill. They also did the same thing. We issue debt and they pay us for those payments.
Thank you.
I guess one thing that does come out of, I guess, the hospital debt is that, what people say is that if the hospital, for any reason, should not be able to make their payments, that does fall on the county.
It's a general obligation of the county.
After the year of their reserves.
Yeah, you get that money first, and there are options, but, yeah, and that's why they have to keep it, debt ratio above a certain amount, so you know they're gonna be able to make their payments.
All right, let's vote on this. Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody against? 4-1. Resolution 9/2443, a resolution requesting Williamson County Purchasing Agent to procure professional engineering services for a vibration monitoring study concerning property located off of Beasley Drive.
Move to approve.
Second.
Chairman, can I ask Jim Cross to come up and tell me if this is in part of his contract? I get why we're wanting to do that, but said it very good the other night at the property committee, what he thought the outcome would be, plus it's in his contract. I just don't understand us having to pay something ahead of time.
It's not in my contract, but it's in
Well,
Gresham Smith's
excuse me.
contract. And this is additional services to Gresham Smith. We asked them to add this to our contract. But it's something we asked for and we intended to, we're gonna do it anyway. Obviously, if we vote to do it, we're gonna do it anyway also, but we're gonna do this anyway.
I think this was sponsored by Commissioner Strasser, and he's not, is he here? He's not here?
I do have a question. If that's okay.
Yes.
Jim, so the informational session, we got a lot of information that night. And I believe one of them was that you had received some reporting from the state and from Vulcan.
So, the county
Oh, the county.
furnished us their blasted report.
Right.
We, over a year now, we've been trying to get Vulcan's information through Vulcan Eddie Hood. He was able to get him to call me back, and we have now, I think, as of today, I think we've signed the last non-disclosure agreement with Vulcan. I think those reports will be coming to us.
So that was in the works as well. Okay, thank you.
What do you, Madam Chairman, what do you think will be disclosed in their reports by the counties?
Do I expect it to be different? I don't expect it to be different.
And if we go forth with this program, whether we do it freestanding like this, which delays the project, well, how long would this take to get someone to come in there and do it?
The seismic study, I believe it is 8 weeks, I believe. And the reason for that is you want a good sampling period. You just don't want a day or 5 days. You want a good sampling period to get different variations.
So in your professional opinion in Gresham's, if we voted for this, and you came back and said there were some real concerns, you would come forth because of your professional obligation to do so and say, we've got some real problems.
We would have to inform you that there's issues.
And same for Gresham.
Or so Gresham.
Yes. So.
He has a stamp and a license.
Any more questions from?
I have a question. What, they know we're doing this study, what, just them from just putting a little less dynamite in during that eight-week time to make sure that it.
Because I've asked for the study to be previous report, not current reports. We're gonna get a 60-day sampling from Vulcan for previous months, not coming months.
I'm talking about the one that we're gonna pay to have done in the future. If we pass this, yeah.
Talking about the people that are gonna do the study for us, or?
This
Yes,
new
the
one.
one we pay, and they, I mean, it's public that we're gonna possibly do this, but it just keeps them from using a
Oh,
little
I'm
less
sorry,
dynamite.
I didn't know where, I understand now what you're saying. I guess that's possible, but I mean, they got a production schedule, I'm sure they have to, they're not gonna shut down production just so they can get us reports, I'm assuming. I guess that's a possibility, but I don't think it's like.
As a member, I guess, of the property committee, I think that this was just important for peace of mind for a lot of our constituents too, to know that there's an independent study that was being completed. To understand, we did have property owners, speak at that committee meeting about, damage to their own properties that they were interested in having more research done on. So I feel like, if this is something we're gonna move forward with, having the study, maybe it clears everything up. It says, listen, the other $325 million investment, we're good, based on the seismic study that we're gonna get. So I think that's why there's a lot of support
Well,
getting this completed.
we did, as well as the design team suggested to the county that we do this. You see the proposal, we got a little time on them, so we suggested we do this just so we have a third-party independent process. Just kind of built in system there, just to make sure we're not overlooking the process.
It's already in the contract.
It was added to their contract. It will be added to their contract if we do this, but we suggested that we go through this process just so we have an independent. for the value of this project, it's not a lot of money to spend just to.
Is there a reason we waited this long to do it? Because I believe the original quote that we got was over January 2023.
Well, there's no need to do the study if the project was not moving forward. So we didn't pull the trigger to do that because things started stalling, so we just didn't spend the money before we weren't going to move forward with the project.
All right, we ready to vote?
Question. You mentioned you're gonna do it anyways, but then we couldn't pay for this. What does that do for timing? Is it gonna be 8 weeks for you to do it versus 8 weeks for this?
There's only one study being done, it's gonna take about 8 weeks. So it's not gonna slow us down. We still have a lot of design work yet to be done, so.
Okay.
We'll have
So
it
you
done.
doing it doesn't extend the project timeline
We'll
by
do
2
it.
months?
Once this is approved, we'll do it right away, so as the design process moves forward, we'll have this information. I honestly don't anticipate there to be any really earth-shattering outcomes that come out of this. There's blasting that occurs next to buildings every day. The blasting could affect some houses, because houses aren't built to the same standard that commercial buildings are. So, but I truly expect they're gonna be within the state standards. We'll find out.
So as a follow-up, I know you're trying to move on. And does it matter, or do you care with the 75? Was it 75?
It's not even an amount.
It's not even an amount.
It says like 15,000.
How much? Okay. The 15,000, will we get the commission to approve that on Monday night or wait? Do it, it's still about the same time. Does it matter to you whether we get that or not?
On this next coming commission. It would be nice to be able to know that's something that we're gonna move forward with, so we can go ahead and start scheduling. Okay.
But this is just an extra one. You're already doing one, and this would be.
We were gonna do this anyway, and then Commissioner Stresser wanted to actually officially bring it forward to the property committee and commission.
The question I think she's asking, this will not mean that you have 2 studies. You're not gonna duplicate that.
So you might as well go on and vote for this and let them get started.
Oh, okay.
Is that why there's no cost listed on here?
Well,
It's already in their contract.
Because it's already in the contract.
Yes, we already have this.
That's where we were
See, that's
dancing
why
around.
I'm confused. I thought
Yes.
it was already in
Moving
the
it forward.
contract, but still, this is just,
It was added to the contract.
Yes,
Added
added
to.
to the contract.
but this one is still for, do the one that was added to the contract. This is not another outside
This is the
agency.
same, this is the same study.
Gotcha, okay.
All right, ready to vote? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Resolution 92444, resolution authorizing Williamson County to participate in a statewide partnership program administrated by Department of Transportation and to enter into a contract for consulting services.
Move to approve.
Madam Chairman, this one was coming from my office for the last 3 years. We have been having meetings with EDON. Last year, we tried to get on their 10-year plan. Their 10-year plan, many of you have heard the term choice lanes. Last year, we submitted our proposal. We came close, but we didn't get on it. All cities have signed off on this. All 6 of our cities, and myself have resubmitted this. Diane submitted it for me last Thursday. I got receipt of it on Friday. They have received it. Looking at the interstate from I-65, from where Old Hickory's at, all the way down to the Murray County lanes, looking at 3 main areas. One, we want to see and address the fourth lane area, and then the other end is to address the 840 I-65 corridor where all these lanes come together. I have reached out to a consulting firm, Deggs Consulting Services. You may know that is Paul Deggs, who's the ex-chief engineer of TDOT, has his company, to help us navigate in Nashville with TDOT, try to address over the next 10 years, the traffic that we've got on I-65. We have the money that we built into the budget to address this. We will, if you approve this, we are going to work and try to get I-65 addressed with TDOT. That's what this is all about.
Anybody got any questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yes, passes.
We need all the help we can get.
Yes, we do. Nobody can argue with that. Resolution 92445, resolution authorizing the Williamson County Mayor to enter into an interlocal agreement with the city of Franklin, Tennessee concerning opioid abatement and remediation funds.
Move to approve.
Second.
Madam Chairman, this is Franklin's going to enter into agreement with us to buy 90% of the funds that they receive. This was the effort of the sheriff working with Franklin and Brentwood, and Franklin has agreed to let us work with theirs, and we'll put it in task force.
Has anybody got any questions?
Just one quick question. I know that we do like a 2-year cycle. Is with us getting the funds from Franklin, is there gonna be a new cycle for application pretty soon?
So posted on the website this afternoon, Diane, Vivi, the new procedures, we entered into the contract with Middle Tennessee State University. They'll be overseeing that. It is posted on our website. If it's not there today, it'll be there tomorrow for the next year's funding. The amount of money, Sheriff, help me out here. It wasn't a great deal that Franklin had. You remember?
The number doesn't include.
What we're getting from the city?
Yeah, it wasn't much. It didn't get near as much.
47,000.
Okay, yes. So yes, the grant is open, the application is open. So that just went out. We're gonna have some work sessions where people can log in and see how to apply and things like that. So we're gonna have some of those type sessions. And then the application will be open up for.
Could you possibly, Diane or someone, send out those links to all the commissioners and get it? I've had several people reach out to me. Drug recovery.
Quickest way, I mean, we're glad to do that, it's on our website, it's there.
Yeah, I tried it with last time, and it was like hard to.
Well, they just got
It wasn't easy to search. Okay.
It's on the
I mean, the
front
last
page.
application.
It was on the front page
On the
last
front
time, it
page?
should be there now, yes.
I think I found it last time.
But I can send you
It took me a hot minute to find it.
Press release that's got the information in it.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right, let's vote on this. Everybody in agreement, vote aye. Aye. Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Resolution 92446, resolution authorizing the Williamson County Mayor to enter into a joint funding agreement with the U.S. Geological Survey, United States Department of the Interior for the 2024 Middle Tennessee Elevation Derived acquisition. Anyway, can I get a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
The short and long of this, Sean is still here, if he wants to come on up, Sean. But it's our share of the money of almost $2 million to do this in the middle of the year.
This study looks at waterways, water runoff, as a whole picture of the water boundaries, by planning and engineering. Who uses data? Our portion of the data.
I guess county pays 50,000 and the rest is.
And once again, you gotta say thanks to Brentwood and Franklin, Davidson County. Some of the smaller cities just can't pay for this stuff.
All right, ready? Have you got a question?
Well, it's just, I'm noticing there's a pass on this one, there's a pass on a bunch of these. I wonder if.
Abstain.
For Property Committee, Commissioner Richards.
Okay, thank you.
Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody against? Passes 5-0.
Thank you.
Have to visit with us for hours.
Let's start.
Resolution 92447, resolution to surplus and approve the conveyance of equipment, vehicles, and other personal property owned by the county and authorizing the Williamson County Mayor to execute all documentation needed to complete the conveyance.
Madam Chairman, this is what we do every year. All of this is declared surplus. It's put in an auction. You've got stools in there too. You've got some stool products in there too, right? You've got 21st Road. Once again, I always ask Jeff so that nobody gets in trouble.
As a commissioner, you and your immediate family may not bid on these items.
Yeah, how about Jeep Cherokee?
You may not.
Any questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody against?
Gotta watch.
5-0. Resolution 92448, resolution accepting the donation of one vehicle on behalf of Williamson Fire Rescue.
Move to approve.
Second.
Madam Chairman, again, this is the Williamson Fire vehicle that we agreed to do the maintenance and pay the insurance, but we got to own them, and so they turned it in.
Good. Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Passes 5-0. Resolution 92449, resolution to surplus and approve the conveyance of 7 vehicles and accompanying equipment to the city of Centerville, Tennessee Police Department, authorizing the Williamson County Mayor to execute all documentation needed to complete the conveyance.
Move to approve.
Second.
I'm gonna let Jeff Hughes talk about this, Sheriff.
As we discussed in the law enforcement committee, the property meeting, this is to donate 7 vehicles to the Centerville Police Department, and as the mayor mentioned earlier, I think this is a gesture of goodwill toward our neighbors that let us, and next door over, that many of our employees actually live at, and they are inclined to back us up on that side of the county. And the vehicles, even though they have high mileage and are vehicles that we currently are scheduled to replace, they are in much better condition than what the city of Centerville has in their fleet.
Anybody got any questions? Ready to vote? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Anybody against? Yeah, don't go away. Passes 5-0. Resolution 92450, resolution to surplus and approve the conveyance of 2 vehicles and equipment to the Hickman County, Tennessee Sheriff's Office, and authorize the Williamson County Mayor to execute all documentation needed to complete the conveyance. Would you explain what good cars these are that we're doing?
These 2 vehicles are Tahoes. Both of them need mechanical repairs. I don't remember exactly to what extent, but.
One doesn't have an engine.
One doesn't have an engine, one may have, that needs a transmission. They're both not operational, and the sheriff in Hickman County has a line item budget for vehicles of $25,000. And he can take 2 vehicles and hopefully make one good one out of it.
Yeah. Jason, can we bring back auto shop for schools?
Student interest driven, for sure.
All right, ready to vote? All in support, please say aye. Aye. Anybody against? Pass 5-0.
All right, Mike, you're next. We're trying to speed it up a little.
Resolution 92451, resolution to surplus and approve the conveyance of a roll-off truck to Humphreys County, Tennessee, and authorizing the Williamson County Mayor to execute all documentation needed to complete the conveyance. Go for it, man. Oh, let's get it on the floor. Second. No, you're on that.
This is the oldest roll-off in the fleet, and the only reason they're wanting to get rid of it is because it's the only one I like to drive. But, mayor that talked to the mayor over there, we got it set up for him to buy it. I don't know if he's going to or not, but we'll go ahead and go through the motion, get permission, that way if they come up with funding, then they can buy it, and if not, we'll take another county. But it's a good old truck.
Any questions? Ready to vote? All in favor say aye. Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Don't leave yet. Resolution 9/2452, resolution authorizing the Williamson County Mayor to enter into a long-term lease agreement with Sims Bark Company Incorporated for the use of a portion of property located on property abutting the Williamson County landfill.
Move to approve.
Matt?
When I first got to here, we had a huge pile of ground-up wood. Once you grind it, it is no longer considered waste, it supposedly has a value. I called every grinding company in every county around us, even out of state, nobody wanted it. And Bark Company, a year later, called, "You still got a little wood?" "Yes." They came down and looked at it, and he was shocked at how much we had. So they started hauling, they were hauling as much as they could, they hauled 10,000 yards in a month. And they were taking it back to Nashville, Russellville, Kentucky. So what we want to do here is be a long-term agreement eventually. We're going to continue doing what we do today. They're going to bring their own equipment in, we're running electricity back there, and we use it for something else later, but they're going to bring in an electric grinder to grind it to the final size and a coloring machine to color it, and that will ship out bulk loads of mulch to landscape people. So they'll color green and black. It'll be red here. I'm scared of that part of it. But anyway, so we're gonna set up there, and then eventually they'll move over onto the cruise property and get a whole lot bigger. And as we get to the point, that machine, 15 years old, it burned once, it got rebuilt, and still can't hardly find parts. So when we bought it, 15 years ago, $1 million, to get another one like it now, it's gonna be about $3 million. So it may be to where that's one part of the process that we turn over to somebody else. But, you know, the mayor actually said, "Why did we not bid this out?" He said, "Somebody else wants it. We don't have to go through that process." So that's where it's.
Well, and the thing that I think is important to know, if you all agree this conveyance of what we're doing, long-term lease, he's located in 7 or 9 states. He does a retail component and delivers to several organizations. 2 of them are right here in town, and they're national chains. Those Home Depot. Well, eventually, they'll bag that, direct ship it rather than take it back to Kentucky to come back down here. It'll save him money. We get rid of a product that T-decks all over his head to get rid of that mulch with. So it's a win-win deal, not a big money maker, but it's a big money to save and get this off of our property. That's the purpose.
A few months ago, you know, some of the big box stores were 5 bags of mulch for $10.
Any questions? Ready to vote? All in favor? Oh,
I'm just, solid waste board, we didn't have to vote on that. Thank you.
all ready to vote? All in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody against? Passes 5-0. Thank you.
You're the last one.
Resolution 9/2453, resolution of the Williamson County Board of Commissioners to encourage each commissioner to complete required annual training and to provide a supplement for completing the training. Did I get a motion?
Move to approve.
Second. Commissioner Webb.
Madam Chair, the state legislature approved this in 2018, that newly elected commissioners that took office in 2018 or after were required to have certain training. And so the legislature, again, this last session, since there wasn't a lot of commissioners that were doing that evidently, so that counties could, by resolution, adopt an incentive program, and that's what this resolution does. We're doing it now so that when the budget is prepared, it'll be in the 25-26 budget. It will not apply to this year's budget. So what this does is, in this line, up to $600 for you completing all of your required training for any one. There's those of us that were in office before 2018 are not required to take it, but we can take it to get this supplement.
All right, thank you. Has anyone got any questions?
Just a quick question. Have we had an issue with the commissioners finishing their training?
We don't know. Go look.
I mean, I've been able to finish mine. I guess I'm just like, it's gonna make a difference, to me to finish the training, because there's a lot of valuable training out there.
Yes.
For sure.
This is, the point is to encourage current and subsequent commissioners to do their minimum 8 hours training.
Future thinking.
All right. Vote. Ready to vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody against, passes?
Against. So, I'm one against.
You're
Did you get
no.
that, Jamie?
41.
So moved.